All right, so that first quiz example, the one in bass clef, I will play the correct answer for you. You can refer to the answer sheet. And here's how it goes. All right, so, a couple things. I think pretty much everyone got that initial ascent. From T, Do, Re, Mi, all the way up there. And this is sort of where things started falling apart. And what surprises me is I'm surprised that more people didn't decide to go to Sol. They didn't write Fi, Sol, instead of Mi, Fa. I expected this. Because that would have been some, very logical move to 5. And something to think about right there. But again, it was indeed Mi, Fa, right? Me, re, do. Okay? And then the second line, of course, was a bit of a trap, because after do at the end of measure 4, you get ti, te, la. But that chromatic motion, right, I sort of hoped would be pretty apparent. So it was literally do, ti, te, la, back up to do, and then and that solatido at the end, too, was surprisingly trickier than I had anticipated. But again, that is how the example goes. Fairly straightforward, aside from a little bit of that little bit at the end. Okay? So for this one, I think one thing that I would like to mention when you're listening for any type of melodic example is to keep in mind that intervals are often smaller than we think they are. Like if you sing a scale, or if you hear a scale or play a scale on an instrument, those intervals are actually quite small, whole steps and half steps. And it becomes really apparent when you sing it. So now that you guys have the answer in front of you, I would like us all to sing this on solfege in whatever comfortable range is good for you. So you sort of feel how close these intervals are and how oftentimes you might be overshooting them without meaning to, okay? So I'll count 3 plus 2 for nothing. Here's your T-do. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. T-do. Actually, the scale of this example, the range of it, is quite small, We have from the lower sol, and we don't even go an octave higher to the sol above it. So this example takes place musically within the span of just under 1 octave. That's really small. Was anyone surprised by sort of how close it was and how, very few notes are actually included in it? Yeah, me too, Lily. It's surprisingly simple, and I think when we approach something like this, we assume it's going to be a lot more chromatic, a lot more difficult, a lot bigger leaps. But actually, remember, when we talk about melodic writing and music theory, or even like listening to melodies in any aural skills class, a good melody, in order to be memorable, can't be something that is going to be so complex that the listener loses it. A good melody has to be close together. Something simple, something singable. And yeah, that's something to think about. It has to be really, really simple if there's a lot of leaps, or mostly stepwise, so an average listener can keep it in their ear. So this, I think, is actually really well written as a melody, because the contour is a clear ascent up the scale and back down, something that they can perceive very easily. The chromaticism halfway through is kind of like that little hook that's like, oh, what's that? But then it clearly lands right back on sol 2 measures before it resolves, setting us up for the cadence that our ear is expecting, okay? So if you leapt too high in your intervallic writing, sort of one thing that I would recommend for you is remember that scalar intervals are smaller than you're probably hearing or thinking that they are. And the way to sort of circumvent that is to practice by singing your scales every day. How many people are actually singing their scales every day? I bet my singers probably are. Emily, Noah, Emily, and Zach. I mean, if you guys are, if you're in choir, you're singing them at least a couple days a week. but even, singers don't always practice them every day. I know my pianists, you guys practice your scales every day on the instrument. That's good. I would honestly recommend singing while you play them at the piano. Seriously. Because, it becomes a physical muscle memory thing when you're just playing it with your hands, and you could do it in your sleep. Gabriel, I bet when you're home, you probably watch Netflix while playing your scales. It's a joke, they're so easy, right? But not when you're singing them, right? Then it sort of forces you to really engage, even with something as simple as major and minor scales, and sort of oh wow, okay, this is good. And then I think it might even become fun again, hopefully. That's the intent. Okay, so that was the first example. Let's take a quick peek at the second one. This one was hard, and that's another reason why I was very lenient when I graded them, because yeah, this example was no joke. But there are some context clues here that are helpful in identifying it. So here's our tonal center. And here's how it goes. So this is challenging because there's a lot of motion, and the range of the example is, it's an octave, actually an octave and a third, and a minor third, so it's definitely more range than we had in the previous example, more notes, faster, motion, so this is clearly the harder of the two examples. But there are still some context clues in here that are baked in. For example, like the outline of chords from the get-go. So the first two measures are nothing more than an outlined tonic triad, okay? So here's something that I would recommend if you're getting lost in chromatic neighbor tones, or just neighbor tones, okay? Leave them out. Write the strong beats that you can hear. If you had written, you probably would have gotten more points than just by trying to write every single eighth note and try to, really, really, really oh, what is that chromatic tone, and focusing so much on the E sharp, right? That's ridiculous. Those are the throwaway notes, okay? Focus on the primary melodic pitches. That's the melody. That's really the melody right there. The composer began with that simple skeleton and just decorated it so it wouldn't completely suck, because that's really boring. I get it. Hence the chromatic neighbors. So then a good composer after that will say, okay, how can I take this basic skeleton and make it more interesting? Well, by making it horrible for music theory, for Aural Skills students in 2020, of course. By doing things like that. Decorating it. But always listen for those strong beats, because those are your big clues. Then you have your 2 chord. Yeah, so pretty easy stuff. And the chromatic neighbors are also kind of sharky, like D sharp and B sharp. And then at the very, very end, D sharp, C double sharp. Okay? So if you can perceive it really clearly and you know exactly what it is, then I say go for it. Otherwise, forget it. Don't worry about it. It's not important. Now, something that pretty much everyone did really well. You all caught that. Do, re, mi, re, do. That was really, really good. The borrowed element there. And several of you caught the minor 4 outline 2 was at the third to last measure. Good. Very, very good hearing there. Okay. So yeah, I think that overall, how you're approaching these is correct. Again, listen for strong beats. Listen for the overall melody. Simplified. You don't go for it like non-chord tones and all from the first hearing. Let it sit a little bit in your ear. Use that first hearing and maybe even the second hearing to just sort of get an idea of the overall melody, the scale of it, right? How high and low does it go? Does it modulate? You know, because that's something we'll be dealing with a lot more, you know, going forward, or examples that modulate, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So mostly just having a strategy. Yeah. Okay. So let's practice our ears a little bit. Okay, so we will be singing, so face shields on, please. It's your favorite. I gotta take off my glasses. All right. So let's actually sing a couple of scales to get our voices kind of going. All right, I'm gonna start with C major. Okay, just up and down the scale in one octave. That should just be fine. Quarter note pulse. This is your quarter note. Again, in solfege, and sign it if you want. Okay, in one octave. 1, 2. Ready? And. I see Halloween came early because there's a bunch of zombies in my classroom. Again, 1, 2, ready, and. The natural minor version. 1, 2, ready, and. Harmonic minor, ready, and. Melodic. Warmed up now. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is sing a major triad. We're going to start real easy and get harder and harder. Sing a major triad over this. So here is your tonic. Sing the do. Now I'm not going to play it. Sing the mi above it. And sol. Fantastic. Add the major seventh. Okay, good. Sing the minor seventh. Very good. Sing the minor sixths above this. Okay. Sing the tritone above this. Resolve it to sol. Very good. Good. Sing me a minor third above this. Good. Perfect fifth. Minor seventh. Good. So again, major seventh now. Very good. Nice. Support. Good. And sing scale degree 6, the minor 6. Good. Make it the major 6 now, la. Good. Nice. All right, new tonic. All right. Sing me a major second above this. Perfect fourth above this. Sing perfect fifth below this. Good. Perfect fifth below it, right? Not sol, but fa below it. Okay, good. Sing a minor third below this. Good. Sing a major third below this. Try again, please. Good. Sing a tritone above this. Okay. Sing a major seventh above this. Major major 6 above this. Nice. Good. Okay, so here's a triad. Sing the major 7th. Good. Nice. Sing the minor 7th. Nice. Good, good, good. Sing, let's see, minor 6. There it is. Okay. All right. Sing the minor 7th above. Good. Major 7th. Good. Sing the tritone above the root. Good. Sing the tritone above the 5th. Are you sure?
What is that D?
It's a B natural.
No, like the scale tone, like the solfege.
Oh, so yeah, D, yes. Very, very good, Noah. So it's a B flat major triad, and the tritone above the 5th, which is F natural, will be a B natural or the syllable D. Very good. Sing the tritone above the 3rd. Also, write the minor 7th of a dominant 7th. Good. Very, very, very nice. Okay, now how about this? Sing a minor 3rd above the 5th. Nice. Sing a major 6 above the 3rd. Major 6 above the 3rd. Good, good, good. It's the octave. Oh, you guys are the best. And sing a tritone above the 3rd. A whole step above sol. Very good. Good. Very, very good. Nice. Nice. So far, rocking it out. All right, so here's your tonic. What is the second chord? So here's our first chord, here's our tonic. Flat major 3, very good, root position. Here is your tonic. Second chord. Remember, start with the quality first. Eliminate possibilities, right? Gabriel. Sorry? Root position. Flat 6, 6. Just in time for the season. Very good. Flat 6 in first inversion. Here's your tonic. What is this? Lily. Major or minor? Or diminished? Right, it's a major chord, very good. Obviously borrowed. So what are my options, Lily? If it's not, and it's not the tonic. flat 3, flat 6, or flat 7, right. What's the root? So which one is it? Flat 3, flat 6, or flat 7? Very good. And is it stable or unstable? It's unstable, right? It can't sit here. This is not in a root position, right? First or second inversion? Negative. Very unstable. All right, your tonic. Very good. Gabriel, same original tonic. And what is this? Flat 7. Sure. So you have... Good. First inversion, flat 7, 6. Zach, original tonic. Sure. Listen for the root motion for this one, right? I'll reduce it to triad, so you have... Quick, the chevrons are locking in the Stargate. I only changed 2 pitches, right? So here's your major one. Second chord is major, right? And if it's borrowed, it can only be, and it's not 1, then it can only be flat 3, flat 6, or flat 7. Yep, good. In first inversion, good. Noah, for you, same original tonic. And what is this? Oh, that one's fine.
2.
Yeah, 2 diminished. That one's pretty hard to mask. Okay. And Emily, for you. Major or minor? Sure. Original tonic. Second chord. Major or minor? It's a major chord, right? Yeah. So of our options, flat 3, flat 6, or flat 7, from here, find the root. Right? And we started here. What did you say, 6? Emily?
Huh?
Would you say 6?
Yeah.
It's 3. It's a flat 3, 6, 4. Yeah. So your original tonic here, the D. And goes up a minor third. The bass note goes down, which is kind of what can trick you, right? Because it's inverted. But it's the root that you need to listen for, and the root goes up a minor third. All right. So that's that for starters. So now, yes. Is there anything I can help or do another example or? Good.
Oh, one thing I was gonna say is something that sometimes helps me is if you can sing like a common tone. Sometimes I can help that because for me, honestly, flat 6 and flat 3 sound kind of the same.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Narrow it down. Yeah.
But if I'm maybe you could play just like a reposition triad and then like go to like flat 3. But yeah, if you can sing one of the notes and notice which note stays the same, that can help you be like, oh, well that note stayed the same, so it has to be flat 6.
It's an excellent suggestion. So here, to illustrate what Clay is saying, we'll just do something simple. Here's C major, and I'll go to flat 3. So now, the G is a common tone between those two chords. Now, if I go from the major 1 to flat 7, for example, there are no common tones present. So that can, like Clay said, that can be a giveaway for you. Nothing similar, even if it's inverted, doesn't matter. No common tones at all, but it's still major, okay? So then, major 1 to your borrowed 6 to flat 6. Root of the original tonic becomes the third of flat major 6. Okay, and everything else is a half step difference. So here, the third of the tonic triad goes down a half step, and the fifth goes up a half step in the flat 6, but there's still the common tone. Okay, so that's a really, really good way to listen as well. So yeah, find those tones if they are present. Okay. All right, good. Thank you, Clay. Good suggestion. All right. So we didn't get to start talking about augmented 6 chords yesterday in theory because we didn't have class, but we can still talk about them now. Does anyone know the basic structure of an augmented 6 chord?
Start on the 6th.
Did you say flat on the 6?
Start on the 6th.
Yeah,
Am I right
sure.
if I said flat?
Excellent, Noah. Right. So if we establish our key, okay, start up with scale degree 6. And then what we're going to do, and this doesn't matter in any major key, you're going to lower it by 1/2 step. Okay? Theorists call this building the chord on flat 6. Now remember, just like with borrowed chords, don't get confused. Just because we say flat 6 doesn't mean you're literally flatting the note. You're only lowering it by a 1/2 step. Example, something like E major, where scale degree 6 is C sharp. Flat 6 would be C natural, not C flat. So be sure you keep that, in line. So back to original key. Start with flat 6. In the case of C major, it would be an A flat, okay? This is going to become your bass note, essentially. Right? Then as the name would imply, augmented 6 chord, you need a tone that is an augmented 6 above this bass note. So if we have an A flat as our lowest sounding pitch, right, in our bass, what's an augmented 6 above it? So again, take a major 6, and then raise it a 1/2 step, right? And what's interesting about this particular sound is it's the outline of a dominant 7th, right? As if it was the root and the minor 7th. But these chords function very, very differently than dominant 7ths, okay? So we have our flat 6, the augmented 6 above it, and then what's going to happen next is that they're going to go outwards towards the dominant, okay? The bass tone resolves down a half step, and the augmented 6 resolves up a half step, creating this sound. Okay? And that's going to form the harmonic skeleton for the 3 types of augmented 6 chords that we have. Okay? So, one of them, and we kind of label them with nationalities, so perhaps the simplest form that you have is the Italian 6. So again, original key, build it on scale degree flat 6. So I'm going to go down to scale degree 6 and lower it a half step and add the augmented 6 above it. So if you want to use solfege, which I recommend, it would be lay in the bass and fi in the soprano. And again, both of these are going to resolve outwards to the dominant. In the Italian 6, the only other chord tone that you need to worry about is a diatonic third above the bass. I'll say it again, a diatonic third above the bass. In this case, it would be A flat 2, C natural, or Do. Right? Yeah. So you have A flat to C in this case, or lay to Do, and then Fi in the soprano. And these are going to open up to a dominant chord, just like this. So if we start on our original tonic, move to the Italian 6 to 5, or you can start on the original tonic, Italian 6. Let's do a 1-6-4. Also very, very possible and very, very common going to the 1-6-4 because it's still a dominant event. Okay, that's your Italian 6, the most basic form. The slightly more robust form is the German augmented 6 chord, again built on lay with fi in the soprano, that are still going to do the same thing. The German 6 also has the third above the lay, so Do, and also adds the perfect fifth above lay, the perfect fifth. So essentially you're building a major triad over flat 6. So you have flat 6, but you still have Fi. And make sure that you're spelling it as Fi and you're not spelling it as an actual dominant 7th, because that would resolve very, very differently. In this case of the augmented 6 chord, spelling matters a great deal, because Fi wants to resolve upwards, right? Whereas the 7th of a dominant 7th wants to resolve down, wants to do something like this. But this wants to do this. Okay, so the German 6, again built on flat 6, build a major triad over it, and spell it as such. So in this case, A flat, C, E flat, and Fi in the upper voice. And we resolve this to 1-6-4 rather than just going directly to 5. Why might we do that? Who might know? Not exactly. It does strengthen the, yes, Clay, it does strengthen the progression, but there's actually a more practical.
Is it because then you get the voices E flat and D sharp moving upward?
You're on the right track. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to go directly from German 6 to 5. And this is what happens. And listen for the bass and the alto. Whereas if you go to 1-6-4, you avoid the parallel fifths between lay and May. Okay, now, one thing of note is, again, like the German sixth chord, popularized in the classical era and the Romantic period, especially by Beethoven. He loved this chord. There are, you usually avoid going directly to 5 again because of that parallel fifth, but there are times when he would sort of cheat by respelling the German 6, or by like arpeggiating it so he could go directly to 5. So there are ways around it. Also, we're talking about common practice era composition, where they really, really cared about avoiding that parallel fifth. Whereas like a modern composer, like it really doesn't bother my ears to hear that sound. It's just, again, a common practice era thing where they sort of avoided that resolution. Right? When I sort of ham it up like that, then it's really bothersome. So that's why they went to 1/6/4 first, was to avoid that parallel. So when you write German 6, again, think about them stylistically. Like a modern composer is unlikely to use this chord outside of a very specific context. So you would want to avoid going directly to 5 in the German 6 because of that parallel. Just keep that in mind. Okay, there'll be more for theory class purposes. So the German 6 resolves to 1/6/4, and then it resolves to 5. Oh yes, hand.
Hi. So the Italian flat 6, is that pretty much always just going to go to 5 and then the German
Yep.
is going to
Yeah. It can either go directly to 5 or to 1/6/4. Either option. But German 6 basically always goes to 1/6/4. Again, unless you cheat and you respell the chord, you arpeggiate it to avoid the parallels. And I do have some examples in Beethoven piano sonatas where he does do that because he doesn't want to bother with the 1/6/4, he just wants to go directly to 5. But the only way to do that, again, in common practice era composition where they cared so much about voice leading in this way, is by going directly to 1/6/4 and circumventing, that problem with parallels. All right? And then finally the third, and my favorite, therefore best, of the augmented 6 chords is the French 6. The French 6. Okay? All right. So again, you begin with your major tonic. Go to scale degree 6. And then lower it to lay. Add the Fi, augmented 6 above it. We have our skeleton. Whenever I do this on the board, I draw in like little gator jaws with teeth. I know it's super elementary school, but it really kind of helps. You think about like the jaws opening up, right? To eat the bad theory student, okay? So those are going to go out to sol. In the French 6, however, there are 2 tritones, okay? One, in relation to each voice. So in our bass voice, I would just kind of build it up to the tritone. And in the soprano, with Fi, I would just put Do below it, which is a tritone away. It doesn't matter because the tritone is equidistant, whether you're going down or up. Okay, so it really doesn't matter, but yeah. It's very dissonant because of those 2 tritones. The easiest way to remember which chord tones to write in, and this will help you in music theory, is think a third above the bass, third below the soprano, diatonic. There's your C, and your D, okay? Wrong third in there. There we go. Third above, third below. And you have your 2 tritones baked in, okay? That's why I should look at the piano whenever I play. So that's the French 6, okay? Easiest way to remember it. And it resolves directly to 5. And if you listen carefully, it has a common tone in it, okay? The third below the soprano is going to be retained as the 5th of the dominant triad. Okay? So, in terms of voice leading, the French 6 is the smoothest, and also carries a lot of dissonance on the outset, with again the 2 tritones that are also a second apart, making it a really, really beautiful, rich, and tension-driven resolution. Okay? And those are the 3 of them. Easy peasy. The other chord that we're going to talk about in this unit is the Neapolitan, usually called the Neapolitan 6th chord, because it's usually in first inversion. N6. N6. There's another way to think about it. Who knows what the Neapolitan chord is? Clay.
I believe it's a flat 2 chord.
Yeah.
In first inversion going to.
We'll talk about the resolution in a minute. Yes, Neapolitan is flat 2. Flat major 2. Keep that in mind. It's not really borrowed because it doesn't come from the parallel key, but it sort of has that borrowed sound because you are lowering the root a half step. So if we start, and you usually encounter them in minor keys, though you don't have to. So we'll take our C major tonic, start in C minor. Okay? Scale degree 2 is going to be D, right? We're going to flat this note or lower it by a half step. You don't literally flat it. So D naturally becomes D flat. And we have a major chord over it. So flat 2 in C major is D flat major. There, Neapolitan. You just learned it. Now, it is usually, again, in first inversion for voice leading reasons. Okay? Right? And it can go directly to 5 or it can go to 1/6/4. There are some voice leading options here. 5 is the most typical. Has a really cool sort of cinematic resolution to it. I'll do down an octave for more overtones. Flat 2, 6 to 5 to 1. Easy peasy. Okay. Now, in actual four-part writing, it's a lot trickier to voice lead than it sounds. So, and we'll talk about that in a theory class tomorrow. Because, again, it sounds really easy, but again, voice leading them is very, very specific because of the possibilities of parallels, and it's also the reason why you encounter it in first inversion instead of root position. Otherwise, essentially what you would have would be this, which sounds really cool to our modern ears, but remember, for a common practice composer, when this chord first started appearing, way back when, what's the problem with that motion? Precisely. So again, after the late 19th century and 20th century, no problem. We love that sound. It's a great sound, that motion of a tritone, even if it's root motion. But when they started using these chords, that was an avoided interval, okay, either in the melody or in the bass line. So they put the Neapolitan chord in first inversion, aka the Neapolitan 6th chord, or flat 2, 6, to avoid that. Because in first inversion, it's going fa, sol, right? There you go. A progression that they were very used to because, well, 2, 6, 5, 1 does that. 4, 5, 1 does that. And 6, 5, 1 also does that. So that's the reason why you usually encounter them in first inversion, even though the tritone leap is really cool. But again, they didn't like it, so because they're ridiculous. All right. So get used to those sounds, and we'll start building those in theory class tomorrow. But again, hearing them is really what matters. So do practice them, at the piano. So yeah. Alrighty. Good to go.